3 spine-chilling true horror stories from summer nights, unexplained nightmares revealed. Sarah never expected summer nights to turn into something so dreadfully twisted. The heat hung thick in the air, wrapping her world in a haze that was stifling and suffocating. She kept the windows open, desperate for any breeze to sweep through the dimly lit rooms of her home, now filled with echoes of laughter that felt hauntingly empty. It started as whispers, soft at first, like the rustle of leaves brushing against the pale wooden walls. But soon, they morphed into ghastly murmurs that slithered through the curtains, chilling her to the bone. "Don't look outside, Mommy," her daughter Mia would plead, eyes wide and trembling. Even Ethan, her brave little boy, would wake at odd hours, splotches of tears marking his cheeks while he recounted twisted dreams that made her shiver, shadows dancing beyond the porch light, dark forms flickering like ghosts of the night. At first, Sarah thought it was just the strain of caring for 2 small children while battling her grief. But then Mr. Jenkins began to appear in the most unexpected places, his presence lingering like a dark cloud over her head. She brushed it off at first, but the way he stole glances at Ethan during the park outings made her stomach twist. Was it paranoia, or was he truly watching her family? She asked friends for reassurance, yet they dismissed her fears, laughing it off as the antics of an overworked mother. Even the police shrugged when she finally reported her suspicions. Who could suspect Mr. Jenkins? The beloved teacher? But that night, under the blanket of the thick black sky, panic took root in her gut. Just moments after tucking Ethan into bed tight, her heart raced when she went to check on him only to find his bed empty. She called for him, searching every room, the chilling silence wrapping around her like a noose. No answer. And when dawn cracked open like an egg, there he was, standing in the yard, wide-eyed, speaking in hushed tones about playing a game with Mr. Jenkins. Her world teetered suddenly on the edge of a nightmare, dread curling around her spine. "Mom, he showed me something," he whispered, his voice trembling. The shadows felt closer now, whispering secrets. His words bled into disturbing stories of folklore, tales of children disappearing into the summer night only to return changed, different, something less than human lurking beneath their familiar gazes. Sarah felt her heart thumping in her chest, the terror wrapping around her throat like a vice. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a pounding heart, she made the decision. She would confront Mr. Jenkins. The tales she had grown up hearing buzzed through her mind, warnings hidden in the innocent guise of summer camp stories. As she approached his house, a sense of dread enveloped her every move, each step feeling heavier than the last. Peering through the darkened window, there he was, the flickering light dancing, casting long shadows that twisted and warped against the wall. The air thickened with laughter, his laughter blending with the soft echoes of her children's cries. She took a breath, her instincts screaming at her to run. But here she was, ready to step into the darkest depth of summer horror. If she crossed that threshold, what would she find? And more terrifying, what might her children have already lost? The door creaked as Sarah hesitated, heart pounding like a drum in her ears. A shadow moved behind the curtain, darting in and out, just beyond her sight. Panic clawed at her throat. She felt like part of a twisted game where the rules were unclear, where the stakes were her children. "Ethan?" She called softly, her voice barely a whisper, like the fluttering of a trapped bird. Silence greeted her, cold and unyielding. She pushed the door open a little, just enough to squeeze through, and immediately, the staleness of the air hit her like a wall. The interior was as she imagined, messy, filled with stacks of old books and childhood trinkets. Yet, the atmosphere felt wrong, heavy with something unnameable. The dim light cast grotesque shapes that danced along the walls, and somewhere deep in the house, a sound ticked, like a time bomb waiting to go off. Where was Mr. Jenkins? And more crucially, where was Ethan? As she stepped deeper into the house, her foot crunched against something brittle, an old photograph, its edges fraying, depicting children playing in a lush park, their faces all grinning innocently. She picked it up, chills lining her skin as she recognized one of them. A different time, a different place, but those eyes were unmistakable. Mia, shaking, she moved from room to room, each one akin to a shadowed realm filled with unease. Yet as she ventured further, she spotted something peculiar under a dust-covered table, a box. The box seemed to hum with a sinister energy, drawing her closer, begging to be opened. Against every instinct that screamed at her to turn back, she knelt to inspect it. Old and rusted, the latch was sticky but finally gave way with a reluctant pop. The lid creaked open, revealing a jumble of tiny, broken toys and what appeared to be clippings from newspaper articles. At first, they were innocuous missing children reports sprawled across the yellowing pages, but then an article caught her eye: Summer Camp Tragedy, 3 children gone without a trace. Her heart raced like a wild stallion, the words blurring as her mind whirled. And then, there was a name, Mr. Jenkins. Suddenly, the laughter echoed louder, filled with malice, drowning out her thoughts like a tidal wave crashing against the shore. No. No. This wasn't just a summer game. This was something much darker, pulling her into a nightmare that had no bounds. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she took off, racing toward the noise, her pulse thundering in her ears. She charged through the hallways, prayers tumbling from her lips, but still, she felt the shadows chase her, the air thickening like a suffocating fog. In the next room, she found herself standing at a doorway marked by flickering light. As she peeked inside, terror exploded within her. There sat Ethan, joined by other children, all fixated on a figure before them: Mr. Jenkins. His smile was wide, stretching unnaturally across his face, joy unhinged. They were entranced by him, faces glowing with a sickly warmth that made Sarah shudder. "Mommy." Ethan looked up, eyes gleaming, as if he had forgotten the worry etched into her heart. "Look. Mr. Jenkins is playing with us." Panic surged. This wasn't her son anymore. Whatever had taken root in those children looked back with an insatiable hunger. A sense of dread enveloped her, swirling into a storm as she realized the truth: the summer nights held secrets buried deep within a sinister lore. She took a step back, and suddenly, darkness enveloped her as the shadows reached out, almost as if they were alive. The laughter turned manic, shrill, echoing in her ears, feeding on her fear. "What have you done?" she gasped, feeling the weight of hidden truths pressing down. But before she could turn to flee, Mr. Jenkins' gaze locked onto hers, and in that moment, the air turned electric, full of terrifying promise. "Join us, Sarah. We've been waiting for you." And just like that, the door slammed shut, darkness swallowing her whole. Where was the exit? Where were her children? Clawing at the walls, she screamed, but all that answered were the murmurs of the playful shadows gathering around her. What would happen if she didn't escape? What would happen to the bond she once had with her son? As the blackness tightened its grip, she realized something worse than fear: time was running out. The longer she stayed, the more she would lose. Which part of her would be left behind? Or would she ever leave at all? A chill raced down her spine as the laughter morphed into something sinister. What happened next would haunt her forever. The laughter pierced through the darkness like shards of glass, cutting deep into Sarah's sanity. She pressed her back against the cold, hard wall, heart racing, breaths shallow and frantic. A sense of inevitability clawed at her. Whatever was gathering in the shadows wanted her, hungered for her. "Ethan." Her voice trembled as she called again, but it came out as a whimper, barely audible over the echoing laughter. No response. Just the dark maw of silence threatening to swallow her whole. The shadows thickened, swirling like a living entity, blocking her escape. She reached for the door, but it felt like an eternity where time bled out around her. The air grew colder, nipping at her skin, wrapping her in an icy embrace that was anything but comforting. Fear hurled her thoughts into chaos. Had she truly lost him? Did Mr. Jenkins know where he was? Sarah strained her ears, hoping to sift through the cacophony, catch a glimpse of a child's laughter or cry, but it mixed with the shadow's mirth, a twisted symphony only meant for the lost. Then, unexpectedly, the laughter faded into a low murmur, the sound of chilling whispers curling around her. "Join us, Sarah," they echoed from every corner of the room, a mockery of her hopes and dreams. She felt their pull, a gnawing sensation, urging her to give in, to let go of the desperate struggle for freedom. "No!" she snapped back, eyes wide with defiance. With a sudden surge, she bolted toward the door, her instincts screaming that time was slipping away. Yet, as she reached for the knob, her trembling fingers found only ice. The door refused to budge, as if it too was part of this living nightmare. Panic surged within her, clawing at her throat as she turned. The room transformed, it felt alive, closing in, suffocating. The children, captivated by Mr. Jenkins, sat in an eerie assembly, their features twisted by shadows, caught in a trance. Ethan's innocent gaze turned cold the moment he met hers. No longer did he appear as her son but as an empty vessel, filled instead with a dark energy. "Come play, Mommy," he called, his voice a hollow echo that twisted Sarah's heart with a new kind of terror. "Ethan, no!" she shouted. "You have to wake up." Suddenly, laughter erupted again, louder this time, and the shadows whipped around, enveloping Sarah. This was a game to them, their nightly entertainment. The environment shifted like fog, revealing a ghostly playground, where children twisted in joy, but the joy felt empty, sinister. Sarah's reality warped, the walls around her pulsating with each laugh, the shadows drawing closer, reaching for her with phantom limbs. She knew then, this was not just a house, it was their trap. She must decide to fight or succumb to the darkness threatening to swallow her whole. Will fighting back bring her son back? Or would it doom them both? Just as fear surged through her, she felt a small tug at her heart, a flicker of hope. Ethan's face twisted, the innocence in him wrestling against something malevolent. "Mommy," his voice cracked, and for a moment, the darkness released its grip, just enough for her to see the spark of her boy behind the shadow, but as quickly as it flickered, the shadows lunged, pulling him back. "Help him! How do I help him?" she screamed amid the chaos. Mr. Jenkins stepped closer, his eyes shining like twin black holes, pulling at her very spirit. "Let go, Sarah. It's easier if you join us." Her throat tightened. The shadows spun around him, drowning her senses in an overwhelming dread. Resolve hardened in her chest. She wouldn't let fear claim her. Before she could second-guess her actions, Sarah lunged forward through the luminous darkness. But would she reach her son before the shadows closed in? The moment Sarah lunged, the shadows twisted violently, flashing like a storm. She felt cold fingers grip at her ankles, tugging her down into the void. Panic gripped her heart as she fought against the invisible force, clawing at the ground that slipped beneath her like sand. "Ethan!" she screamed, a wild desperation clawing at her throat. Her voice was swallowed by an eruption of laughter that surged around her, screeching and hissing, the sound a cacophony of torment. What had happened to him? The fear engulfed her, she couldn't let them win. She had to reach him. The melting air cried out in mockery as she pushed through the swirling darkness, eyes fixed on the shadowed figure of her son. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice rang through the chaos again. This time, there was a crackle of urgency in him, a sliver of the light she knew clung to his spirit. "I'm coming, baby. Hold on." With each step, the shadows reacted, swirling and shuddering, as they reached for her, desperate to drag her back. They whispered sweet lies of comfort, alluring her with promises of peace if only she'd surrender. "Join us, Sarah," they sang, the chorus dripping with malice. The moment she broke through the swirling haze, she was hit by the sight of the playground transformed into a dark carnival, complete with gaudy lights flickering like dying stars amidst the thick murk. It felt wrong. The laughter of the children twisted into something sinister. Why couldn't she see Ethan clearly? Each step on the warped ground sent shivers racing up her spine. As she pushed through the throng of dark figures, she caught glimpses of children playing twisted games, laughing with glee that felt like knives against her skin. Their eyes were void, featureless, glancing over at her with unsettling hunger. "Don't look at me!" she yelled, voice trembling, trying to shield herself from their hollow gazes. She needed to focus on Ethan. Just then, the crowd parted, revealing a circle where Ethan stood. He was surrounded by shadows, their elongated limbs swaying like puppets in a macabre dance. He turned, the light having faded from his eyes as if he were battling some unseen grasp. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice was muffled by the laughter closing in. In that critical heartbeat, Sarah felt the weight of despair. What if she was too late? What if the darkness had eaten him whole? But then she remembered his smile, the warmth of their moments together. That flicker of hope reignited an inferno within her chest. No more running. With a renewed surge of power, Sarah surged forward, breaking through the shadows enveloping Ethan and forcing aside the dark filaments clinging to him. "Stay with me. Fight it, Ethan. Fight." For a brief moment, she saw him, the glorious spirit of her child glimmering far beneath the surface, a light trapped behind a grim facade. She stretched her hands to him, willing every tendril of warmth she had into that small figure. "Mommy! Help!" His plea sliced through the shadows, and her heart ached with a ferocity that ignited her resolve. She saw Mr. Jenkins watching, a smirk forming on his face as if she were merely entertained by this performance. "You can't win," he taunted, the shadows closing tighter around her, a threat of inevitability. Sarah inhaled deeply, shadows coiling tighter at her sides. "Watch me." The children began to chant, a sinister rhythm echoing in a sickening lullaby that reverberated against her chest. She couldn't drown it out. With increasing desperation, Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, pouring all her love and will into the void. She thought of every hug, every laugh, every "I love you" she'd ever spoken to Ethan. It had to reach him, it had to. Suddenly, a deafening crash pierced the laughter, shaking the ground beneath her. A bright light sparked within the corner of her vision, an opening. "Ethan, this way!" she cried. But as she turned, the shadows screeched in fury, darker than ever before, twisting around her and Ethan. Would they fight back? Or would both mother and son be dragged into this nightmare forever lost in a dance of shadows? She bolted toward the light, but something cold gripped her wrist, a last attempt to keep her there, to sever that final shred of hope. "Mommy!" The shout echoed, clear and full of life, and just as she felt herself being pulled into the depths of despair, something inside her shattered. In that moment, a decision was made. But would it be the decision that saved them or the one that sealed their fate? Sarah's heart raced as she strained against the shadows that wrapped around her wrist like iron chains. The cold seeped into her bones, wrapping despair around her like a vice. The laughter dissolved into a monstrous chorus, a sick parody that curled around her thoughts, but she had to focus. "Ethan! I'm right here!" she cried, her voice trembling as she reached toward her son. The distance seemed impossible, stretching into infinity with every passing moment. A tug grew stronger, pulling her back, urging her to succumb to the darkness's embrace. But she wouldn't let them win. As she fought, something inside her flared, a fire ignited from the depths of her heart. "I won't leave you!" she shouted defiantly, her cry bursting against the walls of darkness like a dam breaking. It felt like her very soul surged forward, a beacon for Ethan. He stood there, trapped within an eddy of shadow, his eyes now glazed with fear and confusion. "Mommy!" His voice trembled with desperation, a plea that ignited her resolve. "Hold on, Ethan. I'm coming." With every ounce of strength she could muster, she jerked her immobilized arm free, staggering forward against the dark tide. The shadows shrieked in outrage, a piercing sound that scraped against her eardrums, trying to drown out her cries of hope. The brightness of the light was stronger now, shimmering invitingly at the edge of her vision. "Stay with me," she urged Ethan, breathing in shaky gasps as she pushed past the figures drawn in shadow, their empty faces leering. She didn't dare look closely. Every flicker of movement unnerved her, like thousands of eyes watching her, grasping for her sanity. A figure loomed just in front of her, Mr. Jenkins, a smirk plastered across his gaunt face. "You're fighting a losing battle, Sarah," he sneered, his voice curling around her, thick and oily. "No!" she yelled. "You won. Take him." Before she could even fully grasp her decision, an overwhelming wave of love and memories poured out, flooding her mind. All those moments teaching Ethan to ride a bike, the laughter shared over breakfast, the late-night stories all splashed into her consciousness. She felt them beam out, a golden light cutting through the dark veil around her, the shadows convulsed, screeching, as if they couldn't bear the warmth. It pulsed brighter, illuminating the space between her and Ethan. She saw it now where he was trapped within that swirling blackness, his little face constricted in pain. "Ethan! Look at me!" she urged, trying to reach him through the chaos. "You're strong. Remember our dreams?" For the first time, the shadows quivered, retracting as if recoiling from her words. And in that moment, she saw him caught in dread yet still so beautiful, the light of her child fighting to break through the shell of darkness surrounding him. "Mommy, I'm scared." "I know, baby, I know," she breathed, feeling the fear quaking beneath her skin rippling through him. "But we're not done fighting. We're going to break free together." The flood of their shared love washed over them both, igniting the shadows like dry leaves in flame. They crackled, spark and hiss, spluttering in fury as Sarah felt herself pulled further into the brilliance of the light. "Mommy!" Ethan cried again, a spark igniting behind his eyes as he grasped the edge of her hand. "I can feel you." But just as he reached for her, darkness amassed at the edges, swirling almost violently around them, the festering shadows gathering once more. Panic festered, her heart beat a frantic rhythm as she could see the figures outside closing in, hungering for them like vultures. "Don't let go," she breathed, terror pooling in her gut. The light flickered, sputtering like a candle threatened by a gust of wind. Then she saw it, the monstrous shadow perched at the carnival's edge, a grotesque form coiling, rising, hungry. "No!" But before she could react, it lunged, its maw opening wide, hungry for her son and calling with a voice that was not human, distorted and slithering. Her heart thundered, terror rising as the darkness embraced like a wave crashing down. Was it too late? Would the shadows consume them both? Ethan's frightened face mirrored her fear as the grip of despair tightened. Her breath caught, and time seemed to freeze, waiting to see if she would fight back in time or if they would both succumb to the depths of this malevolent darkness. In the chaos, Sarah could only think of one thing: Ethan. "Stay with me." Would their bond and the light of their love be enough to pierce the encroaching nightmare? Or was the final tendril of hope about to snap? The darkness closed in like a wet blanket, suffocating and heavy. Sarah's vision blurred, the vibrant colors of the carnival melting into a monochrome nightmare. Time warped and twisted, dragging her deeper into a dread that felt like it could swallow her whole. Ethan's cries echoed, bouncing off the walls of shadow, each one a dagger to her heart. She felt the icy fingers of despair clutching at her throat. "Hold on, Ethan!" she shouted, but her words wavered, lost in the tempest of swirling darkness. The monstrous shadow loomed, its shape shifting, twisting. It was a grotesque parody of life, a swirling mass of features that almost resembled human faces, all with mouths stretched in a twisted, silent scream. Sarah focused on Ethan. She had to. He needed her, needed to see her fight. With all her might, she surged forward, illuminating the dimness with the memories of their happiest moments. If love was a weapon, she would wield it fiercely. She forced herself to believe that she could pull him from the abyss. "Remember our picnic by the lake?" she yelled, urgency winding tight in her chest. "You loved the way the ducks chased after the bread crumbs." The shadows writhed, hissing in protest, but she sensed a flicker of doubt within their chaotic dance. Ethan, she noticed, seemed to react, his eyes widened, pulling him closer to the edge of the swirling dark. "Mommy, help me." His small hands reached out, trembling, caught between hope and terror. "I'm here, baby. Just keep reaching." Sarah's own fear fueled her every word, driving her to override the voices of despair clawing at her thoughts, the laughter of shadows puncturing her resolve. But the shadows were relentless. They roared, a cacophony louder than anything she had ever heard. They clawed at her skin like icy talons, tearing at her own memories, trying to rip her hope away. "Enough!" Sarah screamed, feeling her will ignite with ferocity. She let her love blaze, a blinding light against the shadows. It pulsated, radiating warmth so powerful it threatened to push back the darkness surrounding them. The figures reeled, their grotesque forms wavering, their laughter dissolving into frightened whimpers. Sarah could feel the heat from the love she forged consuming them, but the monstrous shadow did not relent. It pressed forward, its gaping maw stretching wider, darkness spilling forth, hungry for despair. "Ethan!" she cried, her voice hoarse, desperation flooding her. "Don't you dare give up. Just a little more." For an instant, panic flickered across his face, but it was quickly replaced with determination. "I want to let go," he shouted, his hand stretching, reaching as if it could bridge the expanding dark gap between them. The air thickened, heavy with silence as the maw opened wide, letting out a breath that chilled the very bones of the night. Sarah's heart squeezed in dread, she could sense its hunger, the desire to consume everything they loved, and then, a sudden, terrifying realization exploded in her mind. Ethan wasn't just fighting for himself, he was also fighting for her, for their bond. That fire igniting between them was powered by a shared love, one that not even shadows could extinguish, but just as she felt the light surge to a climax, a jarring crack echoed through the space, a sound that sliced straight through her resolve. The light flickered. A rumbling split the air as the ground beneath them trembled. Shadows crashed against the barrier she had erected, cascading in wild torrents, threatening to rip them apart. "No! Not now!" Sarah screamed, she forcefully closed her eyes to the darkness, concentrated on the warmth connecting them, and then, in that split second of vulnerability, she opened her eyes again only to find the carnival had vanished, replaced by an endless expanse of nothingness. All around them loomed a thick mist, swirling and shifting, whispering secrets in hushed tones. Confusion wrapped around her, her heart pounded harder as she spun to look for Ethan, frantically searching the dark void. He was gone. The shadows coiled tighter, bathing her in despair. But a flicker of hope still glowed inside her, flickering like a dying flame. "Ethan!" She called out into the abyss, her voice trembling, echoing into the chilling expanse, but there was no answer. Panic clawed at her throat. Had she lost him? In the distance, she saw movement, a shadow, or was it her imagination? A figure stumbled through the fog, distorted and twisted. Was it Ethan? Or was it something else entirely? The air thickened with malice as the darkness whispered anew, a sound cruel yet enticing. "Join him, Sarah, it's easier this way." Cold sweat dripped down her back, as the terrifying truth settled in. Would she follow the darkness, or summon the strength to find her son? With every ounce of willpower she could muster, she stepped forward, determined. "Ethan! I'm not leaving you." But the murmurs intensified, the shadows thickened, and around her, a cacophony of laughter erupted once more as the dark carnival unveiled its true face. And abruptly, the darkness clawed back, threatening to pull her under once again as a nightmarish whisper slipped through the air. "What have you done?" Was it truly the end, or merely the beginning of an unimaginable horror? The mist twisted around Sarah, wrapping her in a cold embrace that whispered of secrets hidden within the dark. The laughter, a jagged sound piercing through, turned into a mocking chorus echoing Ethan's name, distorting her heart with every taunt. Panic surged, her breaths shallow and frantic. "Where are you, Ethan?" The question fell from her lips, trembling like broken glass. Only silence responded, heavy and suffocating. Shadows darted at the edges of her vision, dancing tantalizingly, evading her grasp. She had to move. She had to find him. Taking a shaky step forward, her foot sank into the ground like stepping into a thick swamp. The air thickened around her, each breath a struggle. Shadows writhed beneath her feet, pulling at her ankles, desperate to drag her down into their abyss. "No!" she gasped, shaking her head as if that could dispel the encroaching darkness. The carnival's echoes rang in her ears, a discordant symphony of cries and laughter blended into one. The sounds had become a living thing, wrapping around her, squeezing tighter with each heartbeat. Then she saw it, a familiar figure, silhouetted against the fog, hunched and shuddering. "Ethan?" She dared to call, voice cracking on his name. The figure stiffened, but didn't turn. Instead, a low, guttural laugh escaped from its lips. "No, Sarah, come back." The voice was a twisted version of Ethan's, a sinister mockery that chilled her to the bone. In that moment, she knew it was not him. Ethan had never sounded so wrong. Darkness ignited inside her, curling through her veins. "Tell me where he is," she screamed, but only darkness responded, crashing around her as if ready to devour her whole. The shadows roared back, swirling close as if enraged by her defiance. "Give in. Join him." They swarmed like locusts, tormented souls masking themselves within the forms that flickered in and out of view. Faces watched her, some familiar and some not. They turned their mouths to her, their eyes wide with fury and hunger. "No!" Sarah cried out. Heat rushed through her as she thrust her hands forward, recalling every radiant moment shared with Ethan, every laugh, every smile. She needed that light again. The warmth surged within her as she fought back against the curling fingers of despair. "Love is stronger than fear," she shouted, a fierce battle cry. Just then, she caught sight of another shadow moving behind the fog, purposefully this time, edging closer. It didn't laugh. No, this one felt different. With her heart pounding, she dared to hope. "Ethan?" she whispered. The figure stopped, hesitating for a moment, then turned and her breath hitched. It was him. But he was pale and trembling, eyes hollowed, filled with dark shadows that mirrored those around them. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice broke through the veil of fear, quivering yet desperate. He reached towards her, an anchor to cling to in her confrontational descent. The shadows recoiled for just a moment, a whoosh of air rushing out, as if they feared their hold slipping away. But only for an instant. They surged back with renewed fury, drowning her out, the laughter spilling into manic cackles. "Ethan, hold on," Sarah pleaded, feeling the ground quake beneath her. She launched herself forward, each step a battle against the dark waves trying to pull her back. Time seemed to warp again, seconds stretched on to days as she fought through the encroaching void, but Ethan's hand slipped from hers. She felt his grip breaking like fragile glass under immense pressure. "No, no, no!" Her scream echoed through the darkness, mixing with the cacophony that intensified around them. Desperation coursed through her. "I won't lose you." But as Sarah lunged forward to grasp him again, a blinding force swept across the void, blinding her momentarily. When her vision cleared, she found herself standing alone. The carnival faded behind them, dragging its chaotic melody into the depths. "Ethan!" she called out, heart racing. The shadows twisted back, whispering more than taunting now, their words curling around her with newfound malice. In the distance, the approaching footsteps grew louder, but they weren't Ethan's. Her gut twisted as realization struck. The shadows were gathering again, forming into something bigger, something that was no longer a mere echo but a presence. "Come to play," it hissed, the shapes looming, and suddenly, dread enveloped her. Not just a game, but a hunt. What fresh terror awaited her in this realm? Would she find Ethan in time to fight back or be lost to the darkness for good? The darkness pulsated around Sarah, a living thing eager to consume her. She staggered back, heart racing, as the shadows morphed before her eyes. They twisted and writhed, taking on grotesque forms, each one a memory, a voice, a flicker of light snuffed out too soon. Disembodied laughter, a cacophony of torment, swirled in the air, and she felt it, thousands of eyes glimmering with something primal, something dark. "Get away from me!" she yelled, taking a stuttering step back. The shadows only cackled harder, unfurling like a dark flower blooming in agony, but there, deep in the chaos, was something else. Something that drew her in. A flash of light. She squinted into the dark, focusing on the glimmer. An object? A chance? She had to reach it. Ignoring the creeping whisper of despair that clawed at her mind, Sarah plunged forward, trying to navigate through the writhing mass. Ethan. The name was a prayer, a lifeline she clung to in the suffocating darkness. But the shadows wouldn't let her go easily. They reached for her, icy fingers grazing her skin, pulling her down, dragging her into their depths. Each tug felt more desperate, like the very essence of fear itself was battling to reclaim her. Her thoughts raced. She couldn't falter. She imagined Ethan's smiling face, the way his laughter could drown out even the darkest nights. That image flickered behind her eyelids, forcing her to take another step. The shadows recoiled, their whispers turning to howls, furious at her defiance. As she pressed on, the light began to take shape, revealing a tattered teddy bear lying amidst the morass. She recognized it immediately, Ethan's favorite toy, its fabric worn, a testament to years of companionship. Sarah reached for it, but the shadows hissed, bursting forth with renewed zeal, clawing at her ankles as she bent to pick it up. "Let him go!" she screamed, cradling the bear to her chest like a shield. The shadows jerked back, as if the very essence of love for her son was a form of light they despised. But the moment of reprieve was fleeting, the laughter morphed into a dissonant chorus. "You cannot save him, Sarah. He is ours." Each word struck her like a physical blow, sending her reeling backward until she collided with a cold, hard object, a wall. She snapped her head to the side. It loomed there, towering and black, an endless expanse of nothingness stretching out into infinity. Panicking, she turned back to face the shadows, clutching the bear tighter, feeling its familiar warmth seep into her skin. But the shadows didn't let up. Instead, they began to coalesce into a singular shape, their voices low and rumbling, morphing into one churning sound. "He wanted to play with us and now you will," too. A wave of vertigo crashed over Sarah as the shadows closed in. Panic ignited in her chest. She had to fight back. She closed her eyes briefly, gathering her thoughts, willing the image of Ethan to emerge from the depths of her mind. And in that moment of clarity, she heard it, a child's laughter, fragile yet pure. The sound cut through the din, rising above the chaos. "Mommy." With renewed clarity, Sarah focused on that laughter. "Ethan. I'm coming." She pushed past the swirling mass of shadows, feeling the sting of their anger lash against her, but she forced her way through, holding the bear tight, a beacon in the night. Suddenly, the mist began to part, revealing a lone figure standing in the distance. "Mommy." The voice was clearer, stronger now, more alive than any of the shadows surrounding her. Ethan was fighting back, and if he was there, that meant she still had a chance. But just as she steeled herself for the final push, a rumble echoed through the darkness, shaking the earth beneath her feet. "You cannot leave, it wants you." It was not just a chimera of shadows anymore, something more sinister was awakening. Her heart thundered louder than the growls around her. Time was running out. Would she reach Ethan in time, or would the darkness drag her down as it had so many before her? A chilling image crossed her mind, one that filled her with dread. What if she never made it? The shadows surged forward, closing in. A new, Terrifying thought pierced her mind: if they caught her, what else would they steal? What would she have to sacrifice? The shadows roared, their clamor shaking Sarah to her core. Each step toward Ethan felt like wading through thick mud, the weight of the darkness pressing against her, constricting her every movement. With each ounce of strength, she fought the pull of despair, summoning the final remnants of her willpower. "Stay with me, Ethan," she cried, her voice echoing in the void, the warmth of the teddy bear urging her forward. The figure of her son shimmered in the distance, just out of reach, his bright eyes like stars in a suffocating night, but then, as if in response to her fear, the shadows contorted, jealous of the bond she shared with her child. Their whispers grew louder, filled with fury. "You'll never have him back. Your love is his prison." Sarah gasped as a cold wind swept past her, pinching her skin like icy fingers. She stumbled but regained her footing, fueled by fierce determination. Each heartbeat thrummed like a war drum, driving her to push through the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. "Ethan." She strained her voice, the word tearing itself from her throat. The shadows recoiled momentarily, screeching as if her cries were a sting in their malevolence. Their anguish echoed around her. But that reprieve was momentary. In a flash, they lunged at her again, enveloping her like a ravenous beast ready to feast. Suddenly, a sharp cry rang out, Ethan's voice strained and full of terror, "Mommy, please." His figure flickered like a dying bulb, wavering uncertainly, but there was a glimmer in his eyes that held her steady. "I'm coming." Sarah screamed, muscles tightening. She sprinted towards him, but the ground shifted beneath her. The wall of blackness pulsed, sending ripples of chaos as though it had a heartbeat of its own, and Sarah felt it entwine around her ankles like a serpent, her panic bubbling anew. The laughter morphed into screams of 1,000 lost souls. "You cannot fight the dark. It is your only home now." But just then, she remembered. The familiarity of its warmth reminded her of all the nights she held Ethan, comforting him. It wasn't just a toy, it was a vessel for her love. With renewed conviction, she raised the bear high. "You want to take him? You want to play? Then you'll have to go through me first." The shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness crashing in. They recoiled at the sight of the bear, shimmering against their bleakness. For a brief moment, she felt their power wane, and her heart soared. The chaos around her began to splinter, making way for a path leading to Ethan, unwavering and impervious. "Mommy." His voice kept her anchored, pulling her toward him. "Run." He called again, urgency clear in his tone. She lunged, every fiber of her being thrusting her through the darkness. But as she finally reached Ethan, the form coalescing behind her became a grotesque figure, towering and sinister, its features obscured in the shadows, yet unmistakably human, a face she recognized from her sleepless nights of dread and horror. "Did you think you could escape me?" It hissed, the voice weaving a melody of invocations, intertwining her fears with nightmares long buried. The world began to close in again, darkness swirling menacingly, and the ground beneath her crumbled like brittle leaves. Would the past consume her? Would it snuff out even the last flicker of hope? As Sarah felt the weight of darkness creeping back, she clutched Ethan's hand, their fingers intertwining in desperate connection. "Together!" she shouted. But the walls pressed closer, the shadows clawing and lashing. "That I in the last moment of clarity," she asked, "what will it cost us to break free?" But the answer was lost in the rumble of shadows as they struck. Would her very soul serve as the price for their escape? Uncertainty gripped her like a cold vice, wrapping tighter as the abyss opened wide. Would they ever know freedom from this unending darkness? As the darkness surged around them, Sarah felt the crushing weight of despair drag her down. The twisted laughter echoed in her mind, a symphony of madness that threatened to drown out the love she held for her son. Yet amid the chaos, she clung tighter to Ethan's small hand, their fingers interlocked like a lifeline in this storm of shadows. "Together!" she shouted again, the words bursting forth with fierce determination. She didn't know what price the darkness demanded, but she refused to consider losing him. The shadows flickered, hesitating just for a heartbeat at the strength of her resolve. Sarah could sense their fear, a momentary crack in their malevolent facade. "Let us go," she urged, adrenaline coursing through her veins as the tattered bear pressed against her chest like a shield. Drawing strength from the memories associated with it, she called out the names of their happiest moments. "Remember the kite we flew, Ethan? The way it soared high above the park? Just like us." The laughter around them faltered, shadows recoiling as if stung. "You cannot escape," a voice hissed, dark and charred, rising like smoke. But Ethan's grip tightened, fire igniting behind his eyes. He remembered too. The joyous picnics, the stories shared by the fireplace, the laughter that lingered in the air. "Hold on, Mommy," he cried, his voice tinged with both urgency and hope. With each word, the light in her heart grew stronger, illuminating the murky shadows coiling around them. That radiant force surged, pushing back, forming a vivid barrier against the darkness. Sarah felt the fear pounding in her chest morph into powerful love, a heat so immense it threatened to burn through every doubt. She focused on Ethan, on all they had faced together. "I won't let anything take you from me," she declared. With that declaration, she surged forward, fueled by a love that felt like a firestorm. The shadows writhed, shrieking in fury as Sarah and Ethan broke through the oppressive veil, their bond forming an invisible tether that cut through the chaos. Suddenly, time seemed to snap like a string, figures in dark melted away around them, swirling screams fading into distant echoes. The light enveloped them, a blinding shield powered by maternal love and an innocent child's hope. It soared beyond the edges of the shadows, piercing through the twisted fabric of their nightmare. "Mommy, look!" Ethan shouted, pointing ahead. Through the pale mist, she saw a doorway shimmering, an opening unlike anything they had experienced. Freedom tinged the air with a sweetness she had nearly forgotten. She pushed forward, taking Ethan's hand firmly. "We're almost there." As they approached the threshold, a monstrous roar erupted from behind, the shadows clawing fiercely at their heels, desperate to drag them back. But the barrier of light grew fiercer, more resolute. "You cannot," Sarah thundered, channeling all her energy. "You won't take him." With one final push, they burst through the doorway together, tumbling into a world aglow with warmth, a place untainted by darkness. Breathing in the fresh summer air felt deliciously freeing, unlike the suffocating dread that had clawed at her heart moments before. They lay sprawled on soft grass, and Sarah cupped Ethan's face in her hands, their breaths mingling amidst the newfound safety. "Mommy, I was so scared," he murmured, his voice small yet filled with warmth. "Was it real?" "It was real, but we're safe now," Sarah whispered, tears shimmering in her eyes. She pulled him closer, the gentle sun warming their skin, and as she held him tightly, she felt the remnants of her fear slowly fade away. In that moment, the shadows crested with rage, trapped beyond the glowing threshold of their nightmare, twisted into losing forms, powerless against the radiance surrounding Sarah and Ethan. They had fought together, igniting a powerful light that shattered the bonds of darkness. But even as laughter echoed faintly in the distance, Sarah understood the scars that would linger. They had witnessed horror, but they were stronger, resilient against whatever darkness may come in the future. Sarah pulled Ethan close, anchoring herself in his presence, knowing that the bond they forged in the depths of shadows would always hold the key to their victory. As evening settled, the sun dipped low, bathing the world in gold. They both knew it was time to leave the darkness behind. Sarah took Ethan's hand, guiding him toward the path leading back home, a path illuminated by the strength of victory and love. They were together, unbroken, ready to face whatever tomorrow may bring, and as they walked, Sarah whispered softly, "Remember, my love will always be your shield." As they turned the corner, the shadows still swirled far behind, whispers simmering like embers, but Sarah clenched Ethan's hand tighter, refusing to look back. They had left the nightmare behind. Now it was time to embrace life again. You need to subscribe now to catch more thrilling tales just like this one. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible ending. Thank you later.